method of business would persist until the formation of the National Wrestling Alliance in 1948. The NWA as a central governing body, with its singular, undisputed world champion, would be absolute and undeniable. This control, combined with the expansion of the interstate highway system, and the inevitable popularity and availability of regional television, would usher in an era of wrestling that was defined by what would come to be known as the territory system. The territory system would dominate wrestling for nearly 4 decades, while the borders, authority, popularity, and obedience of individual NWA territories was in a near constant state of flux. To this day, the impact and influence of these territories is still felt. Each territory had its own signature promoter and star. While it is impossible to cram these characteristics into a static, concrete map, we are damn sure going to try anyway.
So open up your eyes way before it gets too late. Now one man, there's no way you can hit the streetlights running, don't give a damn. A simple explanation that you'll never find. Sinners never sacrifice. We never leave love alone. Is hate really worth the price? Look at what we've done. Never cared for compromise. Always threatening someone's life, and it feels like the end of the world.
All right, welcome to another edition of This Week in Pro Wrestling. Your host, Monty and the Pharaoh, but unfortunately you guys will not see this because we've been suspended. So it doesn't make sense to talk about This Week in Wrestling, but by the time this video goes on,
It'll be next week.
It'll be next week. So we've decided to do a special show, and we always talk about jobbers, and I thought, Jimmy, again, the greatest jobbers, the top 10 or 11 jobbers in history of wrestling.
Okay.
Now, again, I looked through a whole bunch of lists just to see whatever.
Sure.
And so feel free to be like, nah, this guy shouldn't be on the list.
Okay.
I think this guy should be on the list. That probably would help, right?
That works.
So I'm going to read off the list which was taken off the internet.
Cool.
All right? Instead of just making our own list. And I want you to go say,
See
no,
what we think
this
about
guy
it.
doesn't fall into my list.
Right.
In fact, I'd replace him with this guy, right?
Okay, that works.
All right,
That's
so number 11 is Rocky King.
This guy doesn't work. Go ahead, read about him. Go ahead.
Rocky King was that NWA guy on Georgia Championship Wrestling. He's a built guy.
Yeah.
You know, I remember him
he was,
taking some major shots. In fact, I remember the one match I remember is Ric Flair coming in and throwing a figure 4 leg lock on him and stuff like that.
Okay, yes.
Does Rocky King make the top 11 for you?
Well, to me, and everybody's own list is subjected to their own memories, if you know where I'm going with that.
Right.
But no, not to me. He doesn't make the all-time memorable list to me. Who would I replace him with? At the bottom of this list, I would much rather put in a guy like Steve King from Panama City, Panama. You got a picture of Steve King there, Jared? I believe you do. But, Steve King from Panama City, Panama, you know? Yeah, that's the fella right there.
So
there
Steve King takes Rocky King.
Do you remember, at least, again,
course.
it's subjected to,
But to be
personal
fair,
memories.
we're a WWE guy,
Right.
So
Right.
it's, for an NWA guy, Rocky King
That
could be on
could be
there.
Steve King.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep.
Number 10, the Italian Stallion.
Italian.
Now, I remember the Italian Stallion, and to me, he was a tweener, right? I mean, they said he was a jobber, but I remember him actually winning some matches and things like that. I'm not so sure, but the Italian Stallion, does he make it on the list for you?
No.
Again, another
to me, but
NWA guy, and he also was a jobber for the WWF in the 90s. I remember him coming up here.
Right. Hey, here's a strange thought. Why is it, and listen, it's not like you and I never watched Georgia Championship Wrestling. We watched it every week for years. Mm-hmm. Why is it that the jobbers in the WWF time period were so much more memorable?
You know what?
Why
It's
is
it's a
that?
really good point. But the thing is that I would say that we were used to so many job matches where the NWA didn't have as many job matches, but they did though.
They did.
They did.
I
So
don't find their jobbers as memorable.
I certainly understand.
Interesting.
All right, so he doesn't make it on your list.
No, he doesn't.
Tom-
I'll tell you. You know what? You know who we can put up? We don't have a picture of him, but that's okay. I would say if you're going to put, but even then, I'm not sure if he's really a jobber. You want to put an Italian jobber? Put the Bellomo.
Bellomo to me
He's
wasn't
not
a
really
jobber.
a jobber, is he? Okay.
Well, he eventually became a
became
jobber.
one.
But if you remember, he was getting a major push at one point.
Right.
I never
How
understood
about
it.
Jose Estrada? Can we throw him there instead?
Absolutely.
Okay, that works.
Absolutely.
Okay. Who else you got?
Tom Stone. I don't know Tom Stone. To his credit, Stone was a real pro. He hardly saw a match where he did a decent job selling. His big moment of wrestling came winning via disqualification against a livid Jake the Snake Roberts, leaving up the Survivor Series. Don't remember Tom Stone.
I don't either, quite honestly. So I don't see how we could be on our list.
I would throw Frankie Williams in at number 9.
Frankie Williams, to me, goes at number 1, but let's not even get into this. We'll save Frankie Williams for after. Hold on to that picture of Frankie. I want to save him till the end.
All right, number 8, Jim Powers.
Jim Powers, I remember. Why don't you tell him a little bit about Jim Powers? That guy was
Jim
in great shape.
Powers, right? He was part of what, with the,
Roma.
what the hell was the name of it?
What?
Young Stallions.
Right, with Paul Roma.
Yeah, again, I don't look at
That's-
Jim
that's a
Powers
jobber?
as being a jobber.
I don't look at him
I
as
mean,
a
he
jobber.
lost all the time,
Dude, look
but
at the arms on this
they
mother.
did try to push him at one point.
Yeah, no, I don't see him as a jobber. I kind of don't.
All right, how about Pete
Oh, yeah.
Doherty?
Oh, my hero. My hero. What does it say about him? Easily the most comical wrestler on this particular list we're going across. The Duke of Dorchester, Pete Doherty. A toothless heel. Yes, he was a toothless heel who managed to somehow bite his way through most matches. Isn't he the one with the arm?
Yep, he was the one with the
Dislocation with George the Animal Steel
Yes.
when he put him in the hammerlock. And
He was.
I never saw an arm wind up in that position before. When the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my God, he killed him. He's dead. His arm is falling off.
Wasn't Pete Doherty the Golden Terror?
I think you might be right, Rabbit. You might be right. Yeah. He's a great jobber, dude.
I don't consider him a jobber if he's the Golden Terror.
That's different. Nobody knows that. Shh.
Oh,
Golden Terror deserves privacy. That's
All
a
right.
different story. You don't reveal his identity.
Number 6, the Mulkey brothers. Now they deserve to be as some of the great jobbers.
Look at these two guys.
Dude, they got their asses beat
Yeah, they
on
did.
a regular basis
Yeah, they
in Georgia Championship Wrestling, right?
Did they go on to become the Ding Dongs? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
The Crockett brothers turned jobbing brothers Randy and Bill Mulkey into a team that started Mulkey Mania. The Mulkeys faced the hype West Coast tag team, the Gladiators, after years of being beaten within minutes and within inches of their lives by teams like the Andersons, the Midnight Express, Manny Fernandez, and Rick Rude. Hold on a second, I
Wow.
jumped ahead. The best part about the Mulkeys, they went right back to but they actually won a match and then they went back to jobbing.
They won a match. That was their golden moment.
The Mulkeys deserve to be there.
Absolutely. They reek of job.
How about Special Delivery Joes?
This guy's, of course he deserves to be here. But if it wasn't for Tony Atlas, he wouldn't be on this list. Because he would have been a former WWF Tag Team Champion, but Tony had to go get hammered.
You're right.
Or whatever it was
You're
Tony
right.
did.
How things changed.
Fucked JD's, SD Jones' career.
Did they eliminate his record
Tony.
loss to Bundy in 9 seconds, right? I think it was 9
Yeah,
seconds or 15
It
seconds.
was like
Hold on.
No, it was like 9 seconds or
Let
something
me see
like
if it's
that.
on here.
Is that still a record? Or was that beaten? That might have been beaten after. Yeah, that was a very long time ago, obviously. But at the time, of course, it was a record. SD Jones. Yeah, he's an all-timer. He's a jobber, right? I mean,
9
come on.
seconds. 9
He's a
seconds.
jobber, right? And he's an all-time jobber. He's one of the greatest jobbers ever, SD Jones. But SD was a special jobber because you always felt, even though he was a jobber, he's got a shot.
That's a great
That's
point.
a special jobber.
That's a great
SD
point.
was probably the greatest.
You always thought he
greatest
had a
jobber.
shot.
You always thought
You're
he
right.
had a shot.
You're
Which
right.
makes him probably the greatest of the greatest jobbers ever because he always had a shot. Once in a while, he might get that win.
This one you're not happy with. Number 4, Leaping Lanny Poffo.
Well, I don't mind the Leaping Lanny jobber description. Just don't tell me the genius, because when you main event Saturday night's main event and beat Hulk Hogan by countout or whatever it was, you're not a jobber. I'm not. The genius was never a jobber.
So then he can't.
Leaping
So then he
Lanny
can't be
Poffo-
on this.
No, he shouldn't.
But wait
be
a
on
minute.
this.
You said Golden Terror and Pete Doherty are separated. So why wouldn't the Genius and Leaping Lanny be separated?
Because you can see his face. It's not a concealed identity. Now stop doing that to the Golden Terror
All right.
and work the identity. It's concealed. Golden Terror is not Pete Doherty. We
So
don't know who he is.
Leaping Lanny deserves to be on the list.
Yeah, he could be, but I even then I never looked at him like, wow, what a jobber.
You always
know?
thought he had a chance.
Yeah, he's got a chance.
Not like SD Jones though.
No, S.D. Jones, big dude.
I thought SD, but Lanny's a big dude too. He's
yeah,
not
no,
so-
he is. He is. That's true. too.
Number 3, Barry
Don't
Horowitz.
this guy. Of course, he deserves to be on this list. And he, by the way, would be proud that you called him a jobber. That's a real man, Barry Horowitz. Remember, he was like, "Don't call me talent enhancement. I'm a jobber."
How about the job man, Chris Multier?
Wow, interesting.
Should he be on the list?
Well, he's the job man. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Top
Compared
10?
to somebody, compared to somebody's name, sure.
We're
why not?
putting Chris Multier on this
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
All
Compared
right.
to some of these names,
Fair enough.
absolutely. But Barry Horowitz, real fast, again, isn't he like probably again one of the greatest jobbers ever?
I agree.
One of the greatest. He should be in the
Steve
Hall of Fame. by the way.
Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler.
Another
Now,
one.
I agree. This guy should be number 2.
Yes.
I can't argue that.
No.
He was one of the great
Right.
jobbers.
Yes, he was. Agreed.
Here's number 1, which I'm not so sure I agree with this. Iron Mike Sharp.
Mike Sharp's not a jobber.
But he was.
Not to me. We watched him get too many title shots. We saw him managed by Captain Lou Albano. No. And by the way, even the Brooklyn Brawler wasn't he managed by Bobby DeBrain? For a little bit?
Yeah, you're right.
So, I don't know, man. I think guys like Barry Horowitz, who were pure and never
Give me
like,
guys that you think should be on the list.
Well, Johnny Rodz is one of the greatest jobbers in WWF history.
Yes.
Johnny Rodz and Jose Estrada are the greatest jobbing tag team in WWF history,
Agreed.
in my opinion.
Agreed.
Even though we did see them get a title shot, the Garden wanted them to win
Right.
against Fuji and Saito. Trying to think of anybody else, though. I mean, Frank Williams, Steve King. There were guys like...
How about Jose Luis Rivera, who we had in studio?
Absolutely.
How about the Conquistadors?
How about Angelo Gomez? Remember Angelo Gomez from the early 80s? The Conquistadors?
How
Very
about
interesting.
Big Bob Bradley?
Oh, no doubt. What about Davey O'Hannon? Davey O'Hannon was
not
a
so sure he
great
makes the
late
list.
70s jobber. Great. He was great. He was. He really was.
But was he a jobber?
Yeah, he always lost. He was a heel jobber and a magnificent one, quite honestly. I thought he was fantastic. He was very entertaining, and he always lost. Basically, always lost. There was some great jobbers, especially in the WWF. I don't remember.
Is
as
Frankie
many-
Williams your number 1 jobber?
He is. He's the greatest jobber of all time. Frankie Williams. Now you can throw him up, Jarrett. The great Frankie Williams, if you don't mind. There he is on Piper's Pit. And what was he being called on Piper's Pit? A loser. You're a loser. And he's like, I tried really hard. I tried. And Piper still beats the shit out of him. But Frankie Williams was the greatest jobber ever. Week after week, year after year, putting over how many great talents did we watch him put over growing up?
Yeah.
Whether it was Killer Khan or Sergeant Slaughter or Greg Valentine or Don Morocco or Stan Hansen or whoever it was, this guy went out there and got murdered. Week after week after week.
That's really good.
I think he's the greatest damn jobber ever. But of course, this was before we hit WrestleMania. Frankie Williams is, for the most part, pre-WrestleMania. What a worker. What a worker. I think Frankie Williams was the best. Do you think he's the greatest jobber? Are you with me on that one?
Some of the greater moments.
Absolutely.
Some of the greater moments.
To me, Barry Horowitz is technically
Barry
the
Horowitz
greatest
is
jobber.
the greatest jobber of all
I
time.
think so.
But then again,
think so.
he has a SummerSlam win.
He does.
So does that still
Does that
consider a
eliminate
jobber?
him? See,
That's
Frankie
what I'm
never
saying.
got a goddamn... That's why, to me, Frankie's the ultimate loser.
Right, yeah.
I think Frankie is. Even on Piper's Pit, it's your golden moment. Look what Piper abused the shit out of him.
Right.
I mean, the guy just never had a moment where he won. He
You're
wouldn't
right.
got anything.
You're right.
He's the ultimate jobber to me. Frankie Williams, man.
Yeah, like when I look at jobbers, I don't think Johnny Rodz. Like Johnny Rodz was a jobber, I guess,
Of course he was.
but he really wasn't a jobber.
lost all the time.
But he wasn't a jobber.
Well, you knew that he could win. That's the same thing with SD. You knew that he had a shot at winning. Johnny did win some matches once in a while.
Right.
We saw it.
Right.
You know, I mean, Rods and Estrada, we thought they came so close at that house show against Fuji and Saito. They almost won. Wasn't that like 2 out of 3 falls?
Yeah.
My God, they almost won the damn thing. You could see the fans going, but you knew deep down they're going to lose. Johnny always lost. Didn't Johnny do the Cobra Clutch? Did he do the Cobra Clutch challenge?
Don't remember.
He might have. I bet you he probably got out of the chair too, but then quickly got sat back down.
Then would you say Tony Gurria was a jobber?
No, not even close.
He never really won singles matches.
I've saw Tony Gurria win singles matches at the Comac Arena.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
You know, like Tony Gurria versus whoever. I mean, I saw Tony Gurria beat the Hangman, for example. You know, one of your favorite guys to forget, who was managed by Blassie at the time.
Right.
But
you're right.
Tony Gurria got plenty of wins. He's the furthest thing from a jobber.
So, official decision, Frankie Williams, the greatest jobber of all time.
If you really want to get technical, a jobber is a guy who never seems to ever win and always is on the wrong end. Yes, Frankie Williams is the greatest jobber I've ever seen.
Well, this has been This Week's in Wrestling, your top 10 jobbers, and we took it from a list on the internet, obviously.
Yeah, but
the Pharaohs made a lot of changes, and Frankie Williams is now the official greatest jobber of all time. Hopefully we'll see you guys live next week. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been watching This Week in Wrestling, and until next week in wrestling. Well, actually, you've been watching This Week in Wrestling next week, and we'll see you next week for This Week in Wrestling. Later! Get all of that?